Hello, Mr. Familomi road does not end. Yesterday won the 2024 Nigerian Prize for Literature. His book defeated two other shortlisted books written by Ndidi Chiazo Enemo and Uchechukwu Peter Umezurike to win the $100,000 prize. Publishers entered a total of 163 books for this year's competition. It is 5:30 p.m. in Lagos, Nigeria, 12:30 p.m. in New York City, 4:30 p.m. in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, and 7:30 p.m. in Nairobi, Kenya. Wherever in the world you're joining us, welcome to another episode of 90 Minutes Africa. My name is Rudolph Okonkwo. My co-host, Chido Onoma, is on assignment. One day after Han Kang won the 2024 Nobel Prize for Literature, her books sold out in South Korea. Queues of customer lines spilled out of South Korea's bookstores, and online bookstores crashed as readers struggled to get their hands on her books. It is not the same for Nigeria's Literature Prize winners. While the Nobel Prize gives the winner $1 million, Nigeria's Literature Prize in its 20th year awards the winner $100,000, about 160 million naira. Why does the Nigerian Prize not transform the career of its winners? Joining us on 90 Minutes Africa today to discuss literature, religion, politics, and arts is a writer and distinguished social critic, Pa Ikhide. Pa Ikhide, welcome to the show.
How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much, and glad to have you here. It's a wonderful thing to have someone like you on a day like today. You know, it was yesterday that the prize was given, and we are glad to have you now. Welcome. What do you make of where we are 20 years after the Literature Prize? How is it going?
That's a complex question. First of all, congratulations to the winner of the prize, Olubunmi Familoni. I think that the prize is well deserved. That is separate from the monetary value of the prize. I think that for 20 years now, literally for much of the 20 years, I have been suggesting to the funders of the prize and to those who manage the prize that at various points there has to be a strategic rethinking of the utility of the prize. By which I mean that in 20 years, we as taxpayers have literally funded the prize to the tune of approximately $20 million. It takes about $1 million to offer $100,000 to the to the finalist. Now, when I say we, people tend to say, "Well, the NLNG doesn't owe us any transparency. It's a private concern." It's not exactly a private concern. 50% of it is funded by NNPC, and of course, NNPC is owned by Nigerians. So I think that we have a right to ask for transparency in the way the funds are used. Now, you have to understand that the prize was not always $100,000. At the onset, it was like $20,000, and then it ballooned to $100,000. It is not clear to me that it should be a winner-take-all approach. I've argued for several years now that by the time you get to the final stage as a shortlistee, you should walk away with something. A couple of times, the finalists voluntarily given something to those who did not win, to the other two. But I do think that $100,000 is too much for one individual under the circumstances that we're in, and that what we need to do is perhaps divvy up the money, whatever it finally is, into three parts. Clearly, whoever wins gets the majority of the larger portion, and then you distribute the others, the rest to the other two. So that is not happening currently, and there is an unintended consequence of that. We are People are now viewing it as a lottery. People are viewing it as a lottery, and they are not really being necessarily very creative. They're going, well, maybe I'll get lucky this time, and so they are throwing in sometimes hurriedly stapled pages into the mix and hoping that they get $100,000. So that's the unintended consequence, and that also is driven by the fact of the structure of it, where I think there are four genres, poetry, fiction, children's works, and so on and so forth. And so when it is the time for say poetry, suddenly we have 160, 200 poets in Nigeria saying, "Hey, look, I want the $100,000." That's not how it should work. Now, that's one concern. The major concern that I have is, I think that for much of the 20 years, we have lost an opportunity for this generous benefactor, the NLNG folks, to help with the infrastructure and the structure of the literary endeavor in Nigeria. By which I mean, I don't think it's enough to give out $100,000, and then I don't know what they do with the other $900,000, but I do know for a fact that that's a high overhead just to distribute $100,000. It just seems to me that a large portion of that we should have a conversation about how best those funds can be used to help support the writing community, especially young Nigerian writers, very creative folks. If you are on social media like I am, you see the brilliance that's there, but they are just hampered by a lack of resources to continue their dreams in a safe space. And I've argued that for several years. But those that run this program have been very, very allergic to change. They don't want. They think it. Well, there's a Pulitzer Prize. We should have one. Our circumstances are unique, and we should think about it that way. Finally, and this is really very important to me. I was raised by books. I like to think that I came from a poor background, but my parents could afford books. I could afford books, and I traveled the world in books. When I went to London for the first time, it was as if I had been there before. That's the power of the mind, the power of the books at the time. Today, young people who were my age when I first heard about Buckingham Palace, Hyde Park, India, cannot afford books. If I send my little nephew $15,000 and I go, please buy Adichie's book, he said, okay, uncle, thank you. When I turn my back, guess what? They're not buying, because they will be foolish though. That's a lot of money to spend on one book. So we have an equity gap. We have an affordability issue. So how can we? Where are the readers right now? The readers right now, they are reading, I would say, several chapters of books daily. They just perhaps reading the wrong content. It's called social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, TikTok, and all of these things. Reading has gentrified into a three-dimensional activity, voice, text, and so on and so forth. So I think that we should consider meeting our Nigerian readers where they are, which is not with the books, which is not in libraries, which is not in bookstores. And I say this with all due respect. We need corporations like the NLNG. We need institutions to help us with that transformation. What is happening to this young generation is like water torture. They are reading the wrong content, and they are not steeped in the kinds of critical thinking skills and things that my generation had. And it's not their fault. A lot of them are just as smart, if not smarter than the best of my generation. They just caught in the wrong time warp. So there are so many things that can happen with the money that's being put out every year. That's not happening. And I have tried all sorts of ways to try to get their attention. I've tried to be polite, no way. I've tried to be rude, no way. I've tried to be in between, no way. But I just think that we need to move the needle from a lottery approach to an approach that says there is value added to it. I mean, these folks, for the most part, they get the money and they disappear, And then that's the other thing. Their books, how many people read this book? How many people read this book? 100 people, 200 people? And you give them $100,000. That's ridiculous.
That's what I wanted to get to. The winner of this book, Familoni, have you seen any of his books? Have you read any of his works?
No, I know of him, and I know of him. So the way I look at reading these days is I look at the sum total of the person. I have, so I've not read any of his book works, but he's clearly, a brilliant mind and all of that stuff. But I don't know that I'm alone in saying I have not read his book. I'm sure. Have you read his book? I can't hear you.
Oh, not at all. But we share the same publisher, so
yes,
maybe I'll ask the publisher to send me a copy.
Yeah, so a lot of these folks are on social media, and you get to see their tweets and their things and all of that stuff. But I made a note to get a copy of the book, and so that's the other thing. I think that, for instance, one idea would be if a book is good enough to get $100,000, right? We could take a part of the money and buy thousands of the books and distribute them to secondary schools. Do you understand? There's got to be something, that's purposeful, not just give somebody. I mean, it's been 20 years. Do you even remember? I can name 2 or 3 of them, but I don't even remember the folks. They get the money and they disappear some of them make great promises. I'm going to build a library, and you never hear from them again.
Now, apart from Chikunigwe, who won it, I don't know any other person other than Ikhide, who passed away. I was at an event in Abuja, and I was on the same table with him, and he showed me the book. And I said to him, "Can I find it online?" And I went to Amazon. It wasn't there.
Yeah.
So the book was not on Amazon. And I said, when I get back here, we'll figure out how to get it on Amazon, at least, because if you win this prize,
yes,
you'll be able to buy it anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I got into a big fight with him because I said, in fact, if you search my wall and Google both of us, he was very, very upset with me because I said, why would I give you $100,000 for a book that I cannot find find anywhere, not even on Amazon? And he got really upset. I think at the time they claimed a copy of the book could be found in one of those online shops that has suddenly, that I think it was Okada Books, that is now defunct. So we are not serious people, and what people tend to gaslight you when you ask these questions. Now, don't get me wrong, we've got some really, really deserving people who've gotten these awards. I mean, Cheluchi Onyemelukwe won the award, I think, about 3 years ago. I mean, she's just an amazing thinker and a great writer. Ochika Onigwe, of course, won the award. I deeply respect and admire her industry. And some of them that I had problems with, I still respect them. Ikeogu, I respected at the time as a poet and a thinker. But I didn't think that a book that had just five copies should be rewarded with $100,000. And then people were yelling at me. But I said, go to this bookstore online that I just mentioned. And somebody said, I don't want to say anything, but hey, you don't even want to go there. And then a year ago, I think the bookstore passed away. So we are mimicking. We are just like mimic people. There's a Pulitzer Prize, so we have to have a Pulitzer Prize. There is a Nobel Prize, so there's got to be a Nobel Prize. We've got to step out of the box of orthodoxy in order to save several generations of young people. And that's been my concern. It's not about bad belly or any of that stuff. I could probably put together several of my personal essays and win one of these awards. That's not the point. But the point is, why are we spending $1 million every day to honor the works of writers that 1,000 people have read? If you look in the past 20 years, for each of, apart from a few, 2 or 3 people, I cannot find people who says 100 people who I could say have read their works. It's a waste of money. Let me just be blunt about it.
Now, there's something that struck me. We talked at the beginning of the news. I talked about what happened in South Korea when this Nobel Prize was announced, and suddenly people rushed out there buying the book of the woman, and it sold out in South Korea. Do we know if this award, apart from the money, if it changes anything about the career of these of people who win this award?
I think within the literary circle, there is an added interest in the person, and I think that it can hurt to have that prize on your resume if you are approaching the West or a Western publisher and saying, "Look, I was this, I was that." But I don't, especially not in Tinubu's Nigeria. People are not just jumping up and down and saying, "I'm going to leave a bag of rice that costs 110,000 naira, and I'm going to buy this person's books for." So that's, clearly the effect is not the same as to be fair, the Pulitzer, the Nobel Prize folks have a huge platform, and it's the Nobel Prize. You won the Nobel Prize, and the world knows. But I will say this: in 1986, when Soyinka won the award, I was in Morristown, Tennessee. That was one of the proudest days of my life. Because in those days we had newspapers, and his face was in the newspapers, and he had his famous hair. And I was walking around the campus where I was teaching at the time and going, "Look, my brother won, my brother won." And people were going, "Wow, you know him?" Of course, I didn't know him. I just lied, like, because it was huge. It's the era. Soyinka, Achebe, all of these writers raised us. We were entertained and educated by books. So it was, you just knew who they were, right? But it's different now. It's the stature of the writer is not as intense as as at that time, because now we have other options. Do you understand? I am constantly reading, but I'm constantly reading on my phone. And I'm reading people. I'm not reading books. So it's, there's this conversation on Facebook about obscurity. Oh, he's an obscure writer. She's an obscure writer. I don't think that's I don't think upon reflection that is necessarily a fair way of looking at it. the Nobel Prize folks have been struggling also with the whole notion of adjusting to the times, with the whole notion of defining what literature should be. In 2016, I think it was, Bob Dylan, my favorite poet of all time, got the Nobel Prize. So there are two thinkers that have gotten the prize that I've really been chuffed, been happy about: Professor Wole Soyinka and Mr. Bob Dylan. Because Bob Dylan was the poet of my generation, if you remember, of my childhood. Bob Dylan, and then Art and Garfunkel, the Everly Brothers. But nobody would ever think of them as writers, you see, or as poets. They were musicians. But they wrote huge bodies of work, right? And so when the Nobel Prize gave him that award, I got a renewed respect for the Nobel Prize folks, because they were thinking about this, like, what is, it's just like saying, if it is not written down, then you're not a poet. We come from the oral tradition of our ancestors, right? Books are relatively new to us in that respect. But we had poets, we had thinkers, we had all of these folks. So there are, I say all of this to say that there are unintended consequences of us constantly mimicking the ways of the other without appropriate context, you see.
Now, let me, I checked in 1986 when Soyinka won the Nobel Prize, he got about $290,000. Today, the woman that won last week got 1 million.
Yeah.
So I looked at the Nigerian price in 2011. That was when they increased it to 100,000.
Yeah.
It has remained 100,000 till now.
Yeah.
So is it that they don't know about the the factoring in inflation into the price? Or do we even know whether they have money put aside? Because the worry with African prices is that there is no money put aside for this price, such that the organization may fold up and the price will fold up with the organization. What do you think? What do you know?
Well, it's apples and oranges. I mean, we started from 20,000. We don't do things in house. From 20,000, we just went boom. I think we may have gone up to 50,000, or maybe just got to 100,000 immediately. I can't hear you.
It went to 20, 30, from 20 to 30 to 50.
Yes. So I would argue that they have been front loading the inflationary factor. So if you look at, Professor Soyinka got his almost 40 years ago. So the present value of it is probably like $1 million now, right? So, but my people, no, we don't do things. We just, they weren't thinking of inflation. Somebody influential may have simply said, you know what, let's just do this. Sure. Because the NLNG, it's and the NNPC folks, they're not Okada books. They've got money, but you raise a good point, and this is where this is where the whole idea of transparency comes about. Is there an endowment to ensure that this prize outlives all of us? I cannot tell you how many literary festivals I have attended that no longer exist. Once the governor leaves, the new governor says, go away. And then they find, it was in Rivers State, it was in Kaduna State, and so on. I had lunch with a benefactor, an arts patron, and an education patron. And one question I asked him yesterday was, do you have an endowment for what you're doing? And he was like, that's interesting. I said, well, no, it's not, because you're not going to live forever. We've got to find a way to. So, but these are great questions that have eluded the NLNG folks because they don't seem interested in. They've got gatekeepers who will prevent you from having these conversations, because I think that to the extent that this pays their bills, they're not vested in changing the current model. If you look at the members of the board, of the board for this prize, some of one or two of them may have been there since inception. So, and they're older. They are old. They are my age and older. They don't. We need young people who are really into the kinds of things you and I are just talking about, to be part of to be at the table, not just sitting at the edge receiving crumbs from their elders. And I'm not saying that people are corrupt. No, I'm just saying there's a lack of transparency. Do you know, in 2016, when Buhari presented his first budget, something like that, I found out that there was a shadowy outfit, the Pan-African Writers Association, POWER, that got $1 million annually from the federal government. Yes, 1 million. I had never heard. Have you ever heard of POWER? No. So I've never heard of them. So I started making my usual noise on social media, and everybody said, "Oh my God, where's the $1 million? I am suffering, and you people are getting $1 million." It turns out, some very old writers with connections in Aso Rock were able to carve out this kind of money. I made so much noise, they claimed that they removed it from the budget and turned it into subscriptions and some nonsense. When you don't do some, it's Wale Okediran now that is now the chair of that shadowy organization. Before him, it was some chap from Ghana. He refused. He would not allow any election to change to get him out of the presidency. So from around the 80s to when he died about 2 or 3 years ago, he insisted on being the. So if he was taking $1 million from Nigeria and he was taking something similar from, guess what? A few writers were getting rich and enjoying themselves, and we've got all these young writers who cannot even do a prize for 50,000 naira, 100,000 naira. It's not right. But when I ask these questions, as I often do, I am shouted down, not ironically, not by the old folks, but by the young people that I'm fighting for. Can you imagine what $1 million from the budget annually would do for the literary community? But hey, I'm not there. Which one concerns me? I'm here.
And if you talk, they say because you've not written any book.
Exactly. I've not written anything.
All right. Now, let me get to this common conversation. Every year this time, before they announce the winner, people always think about who could it be, African writers. And one of the popular names that we hear is Ngugi wa Thiong'o of Kenya. And of course, after they gave it to the Tanzanian in 2021, we felt most people think that this will not happen. It won't come back to Africa for a while. What do you? I don't think we've spoken since the son they did this thing that where he said the father was abusing the mom. What do you take? What is your take on that, and how do you think that will impact his legacy and reputation?
Well, so I consider myself a close friend of the son. He and I went to Uganda. I think it was 2015, the Writivism Festival. Just a lovely, lovely man. Very thoughtful, very generous, very compassionate, and some of my best times in the literary community were spent with him. I also met Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and I had the privilege in DC, I think it was at Poetry and Prose, some bookstore, of standing up, my legs shaking, and going, "I want to thank you for helping to raise me." And he was he seemed very flattered by it. If you've been in his presence, he's just a lovely, lovely man. And I took pictures with him, just as I did with Chinua Achebe when he came in 2008 when they did the 50th birthday of his book, Things Fall Apart. So yeah, so as a child, Ngugi Wationgo was James Ngugi, and I remember his books, and how taken I was by by the characters in his books. So when that story came out, I was just very sad, and it's a personal it's a personal story that I am not going to get into. Those of us uh, children of my generation are very familiar, as you know, with um, with that situation, unfortunately. And if I had the money, I would probably go for therapy, not only with growing up at home, but growing up in a Catholic boarding school. And I'm hoping that there is healing and there's closure in both of their lifetimes. I'm not sure that that had anything to do much with his chances, with Pa Ngugi's chances. My sense is that the Nobel Prize is not going to ever consider him at this point.
Why do you say that?
Um, it's just the human condition. I mean, everybody keeps every year Africans keep yelling at them. It's our turn. James Ngugi Wationgo, what's wrong with you? I will also say that the Nobel Prize in Literature and for peace is not the only Nobel Prizes that we have. They have for medicine, they have for physics, they have for chemistry, they have for all kinds of things. We never sit around asking, when are we going to get this? Now, if you don't even have to go that far, do you know that we have an NLNG Prize for Science?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, so you don't see people getting all excited about it. In fact, if you go and look at the timeline, there were like 3 or 4 years there where they could not find anybody to give a prize to. Yeah, they did not give anybody. There's also a prize for literary criticism. And I said, and I'm sure, I don't know if they've been able to give it every year. I can count the number of literary critics, on one finger, public ones. I mean, I'm sure there are academic literary critics who write, highfalutin stuff that nobody reads in paywall journals. But I'm talking about, literary critics, maybe social, critics who really go uh, uh, into the people, into what is being said in a way that millions of Nigerians can attest to.
Okay, so I like what you said there. Now, if you look at thinking ahead, who do you think will be the next African that will win the Nobel Prize for Literature amongst the younger people writing now?
I think that so the Nobel Prize is a different approach from the NLNG Prize. They look at your body of work over the years, and it's got to be robust. It's got to be substantive, right? And so uh, when Professor Wole Soyinka won the Nobel Prize, and then V.S. Naipaul said, "What has he written?" And the Nobel Prize Committee is pissing on the world from great heights, and people thought that was cute and funny, but that was cruel, because Professor Soyinka greatly deserved um, the Nobel Prize, not only for his body of work, but for his body of activism at the time. He was not only just writing; he was this poetic genius in theater. He was doing all of these things in a under very difficult circumstances at the time. The space was not friendly for creatives, especially troublesome creatives like him. So when you look at it from that perspective, yeah, he'd written a lot. I mean, he was in jail where it was said that he was writing he was fashioning ink and pen from strange things and writing on toilet paper. V.S. Naipaul never had to do that. So we have what people say about us without context tends to punish us. So I think the only person I can think about at this point is Adichie, and even at that, by Western standards, she doesn't have a robust enough uh, compendium of works for. But I disagree. I mean, she's been in the public eye. She's been in a lot of conversations. She's extremely busy. And there's apparently there's another book coming. So outside of her, to be honest, I really don't know. But then I'm biased. I read I've read all of her books, but my number one book is Half of a Yellow Sun. And so based on that alone, I would say she deserves the Nobel Prize.
But what about some people mentioned Chigozie Obioma? What do you think about his work?
I think eventually, I mean, he's written now, I think 3 books. Yeah, eventually, if he continues with, he's a very thoughtful person, brilliant writer. I have huge issues. I had huge issues with his first book, and the way the text panded to Western tastes, and he was not happy with me. And I reviewed that book, and and I teased him for how he would describe beans, how he would describe local foods in a way that Western readers would understand it. And I would say, why are you doing this? And in general, I would tell African writers, why are you italicizing egusi or ugali? When the white man talks about spaghetti or something, they don't italicize, they just write. So I have been involved in the politics of narrative. I've been involved because I don't think that the way we are going is going to get us to be at par with Western writers, because we're just copying them. We're copying them. We're not being, for the most part, we're not being as innovative. And it's not the fault of our writers. It's just the way they've got to get out there, and they've figured out the way to do it is to basically, remember when we were young, is to trace. Is to trace a figure, and then boom. I don't.
Now, let me mention one more person, Teju Cole.
Teju Cole hasn't written much in terms of. I think he's written up two or three books. I mean, he's been focused on the thinking space, in places like the New Yorker and these magazines where he's written thoughtful pieces. But I don't know that that's enough for. But he's clearly, a highly regarded writer in the Western world.
Mm.
I don't know that I would necessarily call him an African writer. And I'm not, and I mean that as a compliment. I think he has set himself apart as.
Is that the same way that Femi Strode, what's his name, Ben Okri? Do you think he's following Ben Okri's path?
When I think of Teju Cole, I don't think of him. I don't even remember him in the sense of Ben Okri. I mean, Ben Okri is just Ben Okri, and Ben Okri is really this enigma who wrote, some really good books, especially the first one, and I don't really know what he does these days. He's probably retired from all of this, and I don't blame him. He's done well for him. Maybe he'll win the Nobel Prize, because that's one person that has at least 4 or 5 books that you could say, deserve a look at. I did meet him. I did meet him in London at the Kane Prize event, and he's a really lovely person to know. So
Okay.
I would be very happy if he won the Nobel Prize. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. All right. One last thing before we leave books and go into other things, politics. You always talk about the affordability, the fact that most people cannot afford in Nigeria, cannot afford books, and that some of these are intellectuals. They write in journals that are hidden behind paywalls. So, what's the solution? How do we? Because I'm sure there are people who teach in Nigeria, professors. How do they access these journals?
Yeah.
Are they paying for it, or the university paying for the journals? How does that work out? Do you know?
No. So there is. I have heard that um, there's a lot of pressure on university professors in Nigeria. I don't know about the rest of Africa to produce works in journals. And one of the unintended consequences is that they have been producing works in journals that do not meet the specs of typical Western journals, maybe in Asia, in India, and so, just producing stuff, and because they want to be tenured professors and all that. So it's a crisis that we're not that we are not acknowledging. A lot of these universities are cash strapped, and these paywall journals are really financial schemes to to get money from scholars and from institutions. And people, I mean, one time somebody did an academic study on me, and I was very flattered. And I said, me that did not go to school, you are doing, oh, that's so nice. Let me go and read. He sent me the link, and I go there, and they say in order for me to download it and read once is $45. I said, yes. I said, me, $45. That one that I will use to buy a Gucci bag for my wife. So I started screaming and wailing like you wouldn't believe. And so the people, I'm a troublemaker on Twitter. The people texted me quickly. No, don't worry, don't worry. We will let you read it since it's about you. And then I started saying, well, you don't understand. That's not the point. I want young people to read about me. Me, I am in a respected journal. I want it. So they opened it up for a few months. And I was telling all my young academics, go and read about me. Do you know somebody? So it's a problem. A lot of our best minds are trapped in paywall journals. I cannot tell you how excited I get when I see, scholars like Okendebe, Cheluchi Oyemelukwe, Ochonu, on social media, Farouk Perogi on social media, not just they give out their content, and I have my differences with them, but I just so much admire the fact that they are out there giving out content for free. You understand? There are so many leaders who are doing this, and I appreciate them and I honor them, but we need to do more. And I think that people, we are getting to a point now where you shouldn't just be paying for somebody's books, but you should be paying for them being here. That, by which I mean we can do it, and it's here already. We can do subscriptions. I would gladly pay to subscribe to you. It's not a whole lot of money, $5 a month, whatever it is, and then you will find that people can sustain their creative spirit because they are being paid. Right now, it's not as robust as it should be. I'll give you look at what the music industry has done. Do you see them holding on to the cassette or to the LP? No, they are streaming stuff. And these young people, the way they are holding on, the way they play music is different from what my generation did. We should do the same with books. You understand? And let our writers and our creatives make money off of it. That's all I'm trying to say. But people are so invested in these books. They get very defensive when I start talking. Oh, here he comes again.
Yeah, but I don't think. Do you think he's the same? I was thinking about what you've been saying. Will people support writers the way they support musicians, the way they support skate makers?
Yes.
It appears as if writers they're not getting that kind of love, and support.
Because they are behind the curve in the innovation space. There are many ways. If you are on my wall, when I talk about Chinua Achebe's books, for instance, and I will say, for instance, what happened when Okonkwo could not find his Samsung or his iPad, and the young people go, "Oh, Paulinus, you have come again. This is not what happened." And so you find that people quietly go look for the book, right? Because they're not fascinated. This man that's constantly talking about this stuff. There's so many things I can do time warps, and and it just takes it takes their imagination the same way it took my imagination when I was 12, 13, 10, 11. You understand? So we can't keep saying you must turn the page. People, our scholars are some of the most interesting people that you'll ever meet, but they don't know it. And they're not, and again, the classroom has helped to stultify us. The classroom has helped to make us risk averse. So, a lot of people just get PhDs and they become really worthless because they'll go, when you ask them, they start in their head, go, the PhD school didn't teach me that, so we can't go that way. So, so we have to really be bold, and that's not happening. It's my point.
You just mentioned the Conco, and that reminded me of Things Fall Apart and the new TV not TV series that they are
Yeah.
planning to
Yeah.
make with Idris. What is your take on that? Do you support that? Do you understand the complaints of people who were saying they don't want Idris to be the one that will play Conco?
I understand, and I also think when I was growing up, I would play Julius Caesar, right? You didn't see white people going, "Why are you playing Julius Caesar?" Right? Or you remember when we were in secondary school, right? We played all these folks, and we were black, right? It wasn't a problem. I say more power to them. It's a good thing, if a Westerner wants to play Okonkwo, right? We can't win. They can't win. They are really interested in us, and so they are coming in to try that. I'm looking forward to watching it, to seeing how they play this. I don't think that I don't think that, I mean, Things Fall Apart is about a particular community. It's also about the universality of our humanity. So I don't see why Idris Elba can't play it. I think he'll do a good job. I also think that we should do a Things Fall Apart movie that is all in Igbo with English subtitles. That's the one I'm looking forward to. Why are we constantly reacting to things? Things Fall Apart was published 1958. There's been one TV, I think it was a TV series, right? And maybe a second one, but there's not really, beyond that, there's not really been a serious attempt to put it in good quality film. And somebody comes along and suddenly we are all upset. The same thing the other day, somebody came up with 100 best books of all times of the 21st century. And suddenly people started writing long essays about why are there only 2 Africans? And who cares? Go and write your own. Go and get your own list.
Very, very good. All right. You touched on all the key points, and but I wanted to move further apart from literature. I know you follow social media and issues. This each time they mention Shoyinka and Chebe, that debate doesn't. I don't think it ever ends, and it will ever end. And I know you've intervened in several times and other people in terms of letting the young people understand the difference between the
Yeah.
two writers. Why do you think is persistent?
Well, it's persistent because of Shoyinka's political incursions lately in the past 10 years or 20 years. He's been uh, he's been susceptible to attacks by folks because of his positions. I guess that some will say have been inconsistent with how he's been viewed in his younger years. So they use the comparisons as a way uh, to get at him. If you notice, the comparisons always favor Achebe more than they favor Shoyinka. I think if we're going to be intellectually honest, the comparisons are not necessary. They're two different people, two different temperaments, and yes, we should at least on the literary side we should celebrate them as two great people. But I have I have been following Shoyinka since more closely in this country since around 1993. After the whole June 12th debacle, I was one of the showing. I was a Shoyinka groupie in the shadows during the pro-democracy struggle. I was a pro-democracy groupie during the pro-democracy struggle, and as you know, I was on Kudirat. I was writing. I was ascribed to several of the political organizations. And they were online at the time. People think that the internet came yesterday. We've been on this thing for at least 3 decades. And I would say he has always had a complicated relationship with young people on social media, and I've talked about on the internet. I've talked about it, written about it several times, and he's been quite thin-skinned about it. He will respond. He will respond, and when we were on NigerNet, there was a guy Ganiyu Jayola who would needle him, and he finally got to him, and he wrote something that instead of calling Ganiyu Jayola by name, he called him the reprobate. So that was the first time I ever knew that the word reprobate existed. Ganiyu Jayola was very, very proud of himself that he had uh, gotten a Nobel laureate to call him a reprobate. And then, if you read his book, his book, and it talked about the Gang of Four. It was four young people who disagreed with him. And he wrote about them. And then of course, there's every 2 or 3 months he will say something terrible about these young people on social media. So in short, I would say that comparison is mostly about Shoyinka and his politics, and people are just looking for ways to get at him. But he's done very well for himself on the literary scene. Uh, he's he when it comes to literature, um, he deserves all the kudos that he gets plus more. And I would say one of the reasons I'm really upset with him is uh, he was a very transformational, very inspiring figure during the pro-democracy movement. He used his stature selflessly during in the 90s to promote the fact that Abacha needed to go. And one of my favorite memories of him was how upset he was when uh, the Ogoni Nine were murdered. Uh, he was very upset, and you could just hear him roar across the world stage. Um, he worked very hard for the democracy, but when I look at the kinds of things he says today, I go, well, what was that all about? We worked hard, and this is what we're getting.
Right. We will take a break. 3 minutes or 4. And then when we come back, we finish up questioning and we invite our guests, our audience to join us in interacting with the guest. So stand by and thank you so much for being with us. right, welcome back to our conversation with one and only Pa Ikhide. If you're a writer in Africa and he's about to review your book, you panic. People call me quietly and tell me they are worried about what Pa Ikhide will say about them. So this is the legendary Pa Ikhide joining us. Let's move away from writing and into politics. I know you follow everything going on. I want to start with the church. Um, Recently we've had these older pastors and even the newer ones basically changing their doctrine that they have been preaching all their lives. I don't know if you follow them. I wanted to know your take on that. I give an example with Pastor Deboye and the change of doctrine on tithing. Do you uh, do you follow those kind of conversations? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Oh yeah, you know I'm a gossip. I love uh, 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 titillating stuff. Yeah, especially when they are miserable, those useless people. So I take the broader view that all of these revisionism uh, are a credit to the hard work of the social media warriors. The only people that are now holding our intellectuals, our priests, our pastors, and our politicians accountable. Because if we were to rely on you, myself, and all of those people behind paywall journals and doing book festivals and stuff, it will never happen. My people are in the payroll of criminals and thieves like El Rufai and Tinubu. But social media has been a real force, positive force for transforming, for trying to transform the way leaders, by which I mean intellectuals, and pastors, in rulers, um, talk to us and deal with us. So I don't think 20 years ago Adeboye would have come and said, I was wrong or something. When they put up their BS on in video clips on social media, and people are just making fun of them, and they are going viral, and I'm sure they see these things, or their factotums send it to them, and then they think about them, and that is how it should be. Uh, a lot of the stuff that's happening in those churches just requires folks to say, wait a minute, is this normal behavior? Uh, and they've gotten a lot of pressure now that things are very, very difficult in Nigeria right now. If people are going to church, all they have in their account is 5,000 naira, and they don't even have enough to cook a pot of soup, and you are requiring them to give you 10%, 20%, 30% of that, and these folks are giving these things. But then the question becomes, why are things the way they are? The church by default has now become the social welfare network of many poor Nigerians. And I think by and large, some of them do a good job, but there are people taking advantage. And so we now have these prosperity churches telling people, if you tithe to me, you're no longer going to be poor, you're going to be this way. So I see a revolution. I wouldn't call it a revolution. I see reform coming as these people are being forced to look in the mirror by the young warriors of social media.
So I don't know if you this is one of our younger pastors, the lifestyle they
Yeah,
display.
yeah,
During David Oyedepo, Bishop Oyedepo's 70th birthday, they all came and it
yeah.
was a wonderful display. What is your take on where we are going? What message are they sending to the younger generation? If the church, because I didn't see any difference between them and the people in the music industry,
Yeah,
the Hollywood.
yeah, yeah. They are actors. They are they are businessmen. They are entertainers. My favorite pastor is in the Bosque, Odumeje. I could watch. I
Odumeje.
I watch it forever. I just think he's brilliantly funny. I don't think he will appreciate my feedback, but yeah, what happens with those church leaders is the same thing that happens with our political leaders. I mean, when you see Tinubu in a 120 car convoy, presiding over a wrecked country, you go, are we even human beings? It's the same thing when I go to Nigeria. I've got young people who travel around with convoys, and they take police officers with them for days. For days on end, they are away from their work. They are guarding these folks. So Nigeria is just a different planet. When you live here and go and visit, you go, whoa, how does that work? So I think it would take a lot to reset Nigeria. Things were not always like this. When I was growing up, we had the Catholic Church. It was a very sedate, or the Anglican Church and all that. This whole new prosperity thing is relatively new, and it came around the same time when things were tanking in Nigeria, and people were looking for succor, and they found these glib-tongued people, and that's all they do. If you send money to folks back home, they will hand it over to the pastor. And there's another dangerous thing. I had relatives who are really sick, and if you send them money to go to the doctor, they will go, well, this is a spiritual attack, so I'm going to go to the pastor, and they hand over. But it's not a spiritual attack. You have diabetes, and it's affecting you. You need to, but they don't. So it's a crisis, like as in most institutions in Nigeria.
Now you mentioned Odumeje, and let's watch him in action.
Thank you.
I did not visit Onitsha City. I don't come in Onitsha City. I don't born in a village. I born in this Onitsha City. Number 3, Newe Street. I born in this Odabo. And I glow in a dangerous street, Oshma Street. And I become an armed robber in the age of 40 years. I became a terrorist until Jesus Christ arrested me through by the help of my mother to change my life. And a destroyer become a savior.
So, what do you make of Odumeje? I don't understand. Even if you create a character like that in literature, people will say this is beyond something that is believable. The publishers will reject it.
Yeah, but I mean, art imitates life. You could put up a similar thing from Tinubu, and you will say the same thing. Professor Shoyinka just wrote a book about the happiest people on earth and all of that stuff. I haven't read the book. I imagine characters like Odumeje and Tinubu will be in there. We have become a caricature nation. Do you understand? It's very sad when you think about it. You think about plays like Brother Jero, right? The Brother Jero is more of an intellectual, a thoughtful person today than Odumeje. And we were vastly entertained then. The Jero plays, remember the Jero plays? It was a celestial church, the white. They are sedate compared to what we are now seeing. But then you also have to think, what will happen to your IQ for you to wake up on a Sunday morning to go to that church, to listen for 3 hours to Bible Fest? There is something happening to our people that is not funny. when I see my relatives where they are mentally, intellectually, and you go, there's got to be some kind of intervention to save Nigerians from themselves.
I don't know, but I found these results on search.
I can't hear you.
That's a very good point. You are talking about the people who are in that church and in churches like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that if majority of our people are that way, when we go out there and write and talk and analyze things,
Yeah.
do you think about those people as people that are the receiving end of your analysis?
No, no. Okay. So you are triggering me. Our thinkers and writers are no longer interested in Nigeria. They are interested in survival. So they don't really think about this to the extent that you're thinking about. They're looking for Random House to publish their book. They're looking for paywall journals to publish their nonsense. So they don't have. You can say all you like about Shoyinka and Achebe and all of those folks. In those days, when they were the age of many of these young people, they were inward looking, right? They were inward looking. Some of the best works on Yoruba spirituality and mythology were written by Professor Shoyinka, right? And he wrote them for us. Some of the best works about food. If you read his memoirs, and he talks about food, you want to go out on the streets to eat. But our young folks they're just hustling, and I don't much blame them. It doesn't make it any better. I don't much blame them. There is a reason for that. Nigeria doesn't give a about them. That's how they've seen it. So they're just going to go out there. We've got all our poets in, writing, cheesy poems in MFA classes overseas in third-rate, backwater universities. And they are brilliant thinkers, but it was the country that tossed them out of. Now they're writing about daffodils and daisies and falling leaves, which is fine. You understand? But we did not. There's just such a sad disconnection and dislocation for us, even including those that are back in Nigeria. They are writing the things. They are looking out. I tell people, you may be in Nigeria, but you are mentally back home, back in Babylon. So it's a very complex situation that we find ourselves in. This democracy that we are practicing is making it worse because it's everything is just surface level prosperity, poverty, and that's it.
In music industry, we've been entertained recently by the fights between Wizkid and Davido. I don't know if you followed that, and what do you make of that division between these two artists?
Well, I can't tell the music apart. So I also can't tell their personalities apart. And so a lot of times I read and I smirk. I maybe it's just a function of my age. They're like kids, every now and then I'll be just driving around the Beltway and my little niece is with me and she's just playing the music and she's trying to get me to be interested in Afrobeat. She's 18 and I pretend like I'm really, and it reminds me of my time when my dad would go, who is this, Marvin Gaye, or is it John Brown? I know it's James Brown. So it's very. One time I was just riding around listening to Burna Boy. Is that what they call him? Burna Boy.
Burna Boy, yeah, Burna Boy.
So he attracts an incredibly high flying clientele of listeners, My daughters love him. Whenever he shows up here, I lose my daughters. They go to his event, and it's expensive. You see, they go and they are playing. I have a video clip of them going, "Shayo, Shayo." I don't know what that means. Ogogoro, ogogoro. And they've never been. They've never been. I don't know how good. Do you guys? Did they bring ogogoro? No, they just took. They were selling like you would go to a baseball game, and they will be selling groundnuts and beer, like one small beer for $10. That's the same they're selling, and she's helping them, going shayo go. So it's you walk into any place of business now, it's Afrobeats going on. So but I can't, I really can't tell them apart. I grew up in a different era where there's, if I'm listening to Celestine Uku and I hear Rex Lawson, I can tell the difference, and tears come to my eyes because it's a particular period in time. If I'm listening to Bob Dylan, if I'm listening to Simon and Garfunkel, and so on and so forth. So I don't really. Another thing that I do is deliberate. Is I want to be sure that I'm not denigrating the music of a particular generation the same way my father denigrated the music of my generation. But I'll be honest with you. I don't understand it. When I was listening to Burna Boy, I saw hints of Fela. I saw a lot of collaboration with people like Ed Sheeran, and he's really very talented, and he's also a business person. So I don't get into the fight. It's usually what you would call trash talking, where somebody says, I had the largest crowd, and you had the smallest crowd. I was the first person to go to this particular venue in the West, and you didn't go. So it's not intellectually appealing to me. But I'm filled with pride when I walk into a place and I was at one of those boat cruises in Baltimore, and they were playing Afrobeat in the cruise. I was very proud. I walked up to the guy and I said, do you know about Fela? And he hadn't heard about Fela. And I go, Fela, this would not be here without Fela. And he made a note to go Google it later and listen to Fela. Fela was a genius.
All right. Let's touch on American politics before we bring in our audience. I know you are big on what's going on in America. So for Africans, and a lot of Africans are interested, what should be their concern about who wins the election on November 5th?
So the whole is, as you know, the presidency of the United States is a bit different from the presidency of Nigeria. We are really talking about ideological directions, not, like, oh my God, if Trump wins, I won't have a job in my local government, right? I worked for 31 years in the local government, and the federal government had very little input into how I was paid, where I was paid, and so on and so forth. The local government paid my bills and still pays my after retirement. They still pay my bill. The federal government has nothing to do with. So we are, in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we are beyond the base. We are right at the top. We are, what is the attitude towards Israel? What's the attitude towards Russia? Are we pro-choice or pro-life? And so those are problems countries like Nigeria would die for. Like, oh my God, we are well fed. It's like us. We're well fed. We're going hunting. Why are you going hunting? You don't need food. But when I was growing up, the hunter went hunting because we were hungry. So it's a different. So when a lot of times when Nigerians are teasing us, going, I pray that Trump wins, you will suffer. It's coming out of a place of ignorance. They don't know the politics. I do think that Mr. Trump has no business being in the White House, not for ideological reasons, because it's just inappropriate for him to. He needs to go and take care of himself. He just needs to. He's a deeply troubled man, quite sick, and I don't think that anybody who really thinks of me in the way he thinks of people of color, or who thinks of women the way he thinks of women, or who thinks of the LGBTQ community the way he thinks about them, should be allowed anywhere. And plus, he's a convicted criminal. But it's the shame of America. It's the shame of our America that he remains extremely competitive. When I've thought about it, when we were young, we would play jersey games. You lined up behind your captain, right? And regardless of how stupid, how shitty the captain was, you fought. That's what's happening right now. No, but it's not really about Trump. It's about the strategic direction of America. Half of America is deeply concerned about the other half, and vice versa. There has to be a conversation about shared interests. Instead of the left being dismissive of the right, and the right being really scared of the left, and we should be in a room and say, how do we get along? I am a lifelong Democrat. I have the day will never come when, in a partisan election, I will vote for any member of the Republican Party, because I don't believe that they have any place in their heart and soul for people that look like me. But then that doesn't mean we can't be civil with each other. That doesn't mean I've been watching and voting for the better part of three decades, and I would say that there's just been a decline in civility. There's been a decline in intellectual depth amongst these leaders, and it should trouble all of us that both sides are just throwing rocks at each other. Talking about body waste, body parts, and so on and so forth. It was never like there's just very little dignity in the office of the presidency. And I hold Mr. Trump largely responsible for where we are there. But he has a 50% chance, literally, of winning the election, because it's not about him. There is half this country is determined not to allow the other half. So, it's strictly divided. I'm not losing sleep over it. There are some confrontations that must be had, and if it means him coming in, I will be sad. But so what?
What do you think that would do to America in terms of the position of America in the world if that confrontation? Because that's actually what is going.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I think Mr. Trump is leading people into in a form of nationalism, almost akin to what happened in Germany, Nazi Germany, and he will alienate America from the rest of the world leadership in the short run. But I don't, America is very resilient. There is something they know about this man that they're not telling us, and they are fighting the war. And I suspect that America will, in the long run, be fine, but in the short run, will be miserable. The world is just, the Western world especially is aghast at the notion that that he will be president of this country, as they should be. But it's a failure of leadership between the ignorance of the right and the arrogance of the left. There is a middle ground.
Thank you so much, Ikhide. And let's invite our people who are here to join in this conversation. When I call you, please ask a question, just one question. Find your best question and ask him. And if you want to join us, turn on your cameras so that I can bring you up. Cyril Oji, you are first. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I thought I wanted to come in late, so I'm not the first, but it is what it is. Okay. I want to go back to the where I jumped in there, where I entered. Ikhide was discussing this, issue of, books versus social media, and that's something he's he's really very passionate about it. So I wanted to ask Pa Ikhide whether we are really discussing the wrong issue. Are we discussing the problem, the economic problem in Nigeria? Because remember, we all know that this lady who just won the Nobel Prize in Literature, her books went off the shelves in South Korea.
Yeah.
Now, can you say that in Nigeria today? No. Wole Soyinka, if I'm not mistaken, recently wrote a book, and I don't know whether, he joked he hadn't sold many copies. So the economic problem in Nigeria, isn't it really the issue? Again, we've discussed this issue on your X page, and there was somebody, this is not my idea, it is somebody, I've forgotten the guy's name, who said that anybody saying that we have to stop books is making a fundamental mistake. Because it is actually when you write a book that you are able to develop a point in depth, because I don't really know the parallel between something you can put in a book and something you can just put in social media. Because it's supposed to be one question, so that's it for me. Thank you.
All right. So, Pa Ikhide, you can answer.
So, Agassi, we are probably worried about the same thing. It's just an issue of semantics. The shared interest here is reading good content. How do we trick people into reading good content? In Nigeria, people, just like, so by the way, in the US, people are not reading books. My kids, I think I got my youngest child, Fearless Frank, to promise me that when I die, he will move my books to whoever would want them in Nigeria and not send them to the dump to be mushed, because they are very good books. I spent a lot of money collecting books of my childhood, contemporary books, and so on and so forth. But they don't read the books, and they are all high flyers. They just don't read books. The oldest, had one of Adichie's books and one of Achebe's books, but they were more like superstitious totem for her. She would put them with, and anywhere she traveled, when she was stressed, she would take the basket containing the books and go with them. But they're not reading books. But America can afford her ignorance. Africa cannot afford her ignorance. We have got young people who need to read about what's in your mind. How do we get them to do this when they cannot afford books? Like I said, if I didn't have books, if I hadn't traveled in books, I would not be here today. You understand? Similarly, I think there will be a generation 20 years from now that will say, if my uncle had not bought me that iPhone 5, I will not be here today, because in that iPhone 5, I traveled the world. So it's not so much about the medium, it's about the content. And I'm trying to figure out how best we can put affordable content before young people, and also pay the owners of the content, just like the music industry is doing now. And I'm very open to that conversation. But I just think continue to publish books without any. A long time ago I talked about, then they changed them. They call them ebooks with paid chapters and stuff. These young people don't know about chapters and books. They just reading. So when I first came to this country, I want to share something real quickly. So I noticed they had built a new building, and between the building and another building, there was no sidewalks. And I was asking somebody, why don't you have sidewalks here? They said they're just watching where people would walk. And after that, they will build to. That was just deep, that was just deep. And I'm like, wow, it would never occur to me. So similarly, we have to think about where, one final thing, we spend, I live in a fairly wealthy county, Montgomery County, Maryland. And we spend upward of, so for an elementary school, we will spend $80 million to build the elementary school. We will spend $120 million to build a middle school, and we'll spend $200 million to build a high school. So compare that, convert that to the Naira, and you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about. 50% of our budget is on education. We spend for libraries, for local libraries, we spend about $50 to $100 million per library. So we built this library, this fine library, and I took my daughter to it, and she looked around and I said, "What do you think?" She said, "It's okay." I said, "What do you mean it's okay? This is a library, huge, nice places and all." So yeah, all of it can fit in my laptop. That was about 15 years ago. It occurred to me that when we were building this library, we had not asked her or her generation what they would like to see in a library. And the answer could have been, we don't need a library. Just get us a laptop and it'll be cheaper. But the world is ruled by older folks like me and Ogasiri and all of you guys. So we have this fixed mindset, these ideas about how the world should run. And we try to run it. My son is constantly pressing his phone. I never see him with a laptop. Constantly pressing his phone, but he's gainfully employed as a tech person. And I go, "What do you do?" Turns out he's working. He's working on his. I never see him with a book. So but he's exposed to content. When you buy a car these days or any appliance, where are the manuals? It's called Google. So we are not, our young people, not only in Africa, here, they are humoring us. They are humoring us because they know that we have the power, but they have the culture. And there's a disconnect, and we're not dealing with it.
Thank you so much. Revolution, you are next. Wait, Ikhide.
Yeah, respect to you one more time, Dr. Rudolph. And good morning or good evening or good afternoon. I don't know where you are, my brother. And respect to other brothers in the studio. My question is, I used to read before anyway. Suddenly I stopped reading and went into writing music and for myself and for people. So that's it. But my coming in is on the political side. Rudolph asked you a question politically. And you nearly use that word that I like to hear people of your level to use, but suddenly you changed it and say, "Oh, I won't call it revolution." You call something else. So that shocked me a little bit. I was like, "Wow, why did he change that word?" Are we afraid of this elusive revolution that we are trying to avoid, that we all know will come one day to save our country? Thank you.
The short answer is yes. I am in denial about what is coming. The short answer is yes. I am in denial about what is coming. There's a coming conflagration because our people are ignoring what is on the ground. And I have thought about it, and I don't know that there's any other way out of the situation. And it's very sad. On the other hand, I am talking from a place of privilege. And so I'm a father of 4 children, and I live in the West. I live in Maryland, close to Washington, D.C. I have lived in the West for over 40 years. And as a father, the father in me has trouble asking for war in a place where I am not exposed to the effects of the war. Some of my most difficult times have been when the young people pour onto the streets, and I'm thinking, may we not lose people, and we've lost lots of people. But you know, we were not born yesterday. I mean, you think, look at Nigeria. Nigeria cannot continue the way it is going. Cannot continue. But they are all, my people are in churches praying, you know, wishing this thing away. And I don't know. Our thinkers are in the West, you know, like myself, you know, in posh places, speaking big English. Our pastors are making money. So, but one day people will be really, really upset. And when they find out how easy it is to sack the place, there is no going back. And I'm just telling you that you are right. I am being cowardly, and I don't want to use the word revolution because I don't. I'd I'd rather we had other options to correct course, but I don't know that there's any option.
All right. Thank you, Revolution. Mr. James, Eunice.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for coming. Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you.
Yeah, please kindly let me ask you something. Did you attend Arinze Primary School in Benin City?
Yes.
Yeah, we were classmates.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. We were classmates. Around the Civil War period.
Yes.
Yeah, you got injured one day and you bled profusely. We took you to the barracks along Saple Road.
Wow.
That was almost
it was
40, 30 years ago. I can't remember.
No, it was more than that. It was I was in primary 5.
Yeah, you bled profusely.
Yeah, my brother, my first cousin was in primary 6, and this man stabbed me here.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah, with a chisel. He went for my eyes and he missed, and he stabbed me with a chisel.
Yeah,
and I ended up. You guys took me to General Hospital.
No, we took you first to your father's place along Saple Road.
Yes, my father was a mobile police officer. And,
precisely, you got it right.
Anyway, they seized him. They seized the boy and threw him in the.
Anyway, that's part.
Wow. I was reflecting yesterday that I don't remember anybody from my primary school days.
Anyway, I live in the Gambia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great to see you. Well, I hope we can connect after this.
Yeah, I'll contact you through Mr. Rudolph.
Yes.
Thank you.
I didn't, and that's another story, because the Nigerian police force was a central force. We traveled a lot, you know, so
your father was a mobile policeman.
Yes, I only stayed in the primary school for 2 years, so I don't have much memories of. And that's part of the tragedy of.
Okay.
So what do you do in the Gambia now?
I lecture groundwater hydrology and analytic geography at the University of the Gambia.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I do here for a living.
I have goosebumps. Your memory is great.
Thank you so much.
I left. I didn't finish. I left. I didn't go to primary 6. From primary 5, I left.
Okay. I see.
An Association Catholic College.
Let me just ask a very short question. Don't you think the country is ripe to think about post-Nigerian republics?
I think it's similar to the question that the revolution asked.
Post-Nigerian republics. We should start organizing ourselves. That's just the point. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you. Yeah.
So primary school students meeting here after 40-something years. Interesting. Asim, you're next.
Hey, thank you very much, Ikhide. I think we do cross, our path do cross on your Facebook page. I'm the guy who promised books, but I don't know when I'm going to receive them. I'm in the UK anyway, but that is by the way.
So the UK is easy to send you.
If
Hello?
Yeah, and I remember I told you said, you've already sent it to Nigeria, and I don't know who will read it in Nigeria. Yes. So I remember the last time packs of them you advertised. I said, oh, let me have them here. You said you've already promised. In Ewu village, in Esaland. I don't know whether that is where you sent it. Okay. What I want to ask is it's really about maybe it's a follow-up to what James asked you.
Yeah.
You see, the thing is, it's about Nigeria.
Yeah.
If you, I want to put you on the spot. If you are the
Yes.
commander in chief
Yeah.
and president of Nigeria, with the way things are now, what will you do?
Well, so I have I mean, so Professor Cyril Orji and I met in the early 90s during the pro-democracy struggle. And we sort of knew the leaders at the time, Soyinka, Tinubu, Beko Kuti, Bolaji Aluko, Adeyeye, and so on and so forth. And there was, at least for me, there was clarity in what the desired outcome was. There was going to be freedom of association, there was going to be democracy, and then we were going to talk about moving the power from the central to the satellites, maybe even regional arrangements and all that. Then they got the power, and they began to enjoy the power and do nothing about it, and just basically started looting things, including things that are welded down. So, and Mr. Tinubu is part and parcel of this theft since 1999, from Obasanjo down to him. They've done nothing to address what we were fighting for. So what you are asking is an academic question. I mean, he's been, if I had been Obasanjo and the pro-democracy movement in 1999, I would have been doing, as a part of a team, doing the work of changing things from the central power to the satellite. And that none of that has happened. If you look at all of our institutions, the police, the public institutions, the police, education, and so on and so forth, not much has changed since the cash and carry days of colonial power. The Nigerian police force, which my father was part of, was designed to conquer, to oppress, and it's still the same way it is now. That needs to change. The educational system was a hurried arrangement. That needs to change. And those were the kinds of things I thought we were going to do, but none of that has happened. Go to Nigeria now, you see everybody's a municipality of one. Getting their own water, their own safety and security, their own education, everything. So that's what I would have done. That was my expectation, that we were going to make changes to people, but that didn't happen.
Thank you, CM. Let's go to all politics. Ovie, you're next.
Good afternoon. Good day, Ikhide, if I don't know if I pronounce it right. I mean, it's a beautiful sight when I see you and your high school, elementary school reunion. So I don't get just that to come and take part of to be part of history, to be part of history of reunion. So my question is, I overheard you trying to draw an analogy, trying to draw a parallel between Hitler Germany and Trump America. It threw me off. I was okay. Is there something that I'm missing? Because Hitler Germany and Trump America is pretty much heaven and hell, in the sense that since when German lost the First World War, pretty much the whole world, quote unquote, blamed German for that, and they went hard on them, trying to imposing fine and everything. So, which pretty much crushed the economy. They went from 4.6 mark to $1 to 4 trillion to $1. Both the poor and the rich are pretty much hopeless. And that's what the message of Hitler resonated with the people. But coming back to America, this is pretty much heaven, and there's, I mean, they are not, there's no comparison between two of them at all. When you are trying to draw that comparison, is it because you are a staunch Democrat and you are trying to make a narrative, or I mean, is there really truth to what you are trying to Tell us.
It's a great question. So I came to this country in 1982, and I have given everything that I had. I came in as a young warrior, and America has taken everything that I have plus more, and of course paid me in return and all that stuff. I have joked that I am an expatriate on long-term loan to America, and I'm not alone. Literally for the most part, every one of us comes to this country. We come in peace, and we contribute. This country was built by immigrants, and it's been a nation of immigrants. The only difference now is that the kinds of immigrants that we are talking about are immigrants that look like me and you, immigrants of color. I am very, very invested in narrative, as you know. What people say about you, what people say to you, they define you. And if Trump wins the battle, it is because he has frightened white America enough about us. He has described us in ways that are frightening, not only in words, but in graphics, in pictures, and everything. He has said all sorts of things. We eat dogs, we eat cats, we eat this, we do that. And he has said, if so and so wins, this country is going to be a shithole. I was visiting Baltimore yesterday with a friend of mine who is an arts patron and an education patron. Came to see me from was visiting New York, and so he came by train to Baltimore, and we had lunch, and he was saying, "This is Baltimore." I said, "Yeah, it's Baltimore." I said, "How much are homes?" And, well, a townhouse around here will be like $1 million. And he says, "Well, that's not what I understand. It looks a lot more diverse." And I said, "Well, there are parts that you go to, it's black. There are parts you go to, it's white. There are parts you go to like this." So we've got to be careful how we respond to what people say about us. I think that, like I said, it is one thing to have different ideological approaches to politics, but it should be from a place of equity and equality. When Mr. Trump goes around saying that he has, and he has said it, he has the right genes, the superior genes, and so on and so forth. He's saying things about you. When he says that somebody of Miss Harris's caliber, a daughter of 2 professors, an accomplished lady herself, is dumb, and he's not dumb. He's talking about you. So we could agree about a choice on abortion, no abortion, this or no this. But what we must we can disagree, but what we must agree upon is that nobody should ever look at us and say we are subhuman beings that can be morphed. That's where I'm coming from. All of these things you're saying, if you read Moller's poem, it happened in Nazi Germany. They were coming, no, it won't happen to us. It won't happen here. It won't happen. Then it happened. So it will not happen. It might not happen in America because we will be vigilant. But the kinds of language that I'm hearing right now is scary, and you should be concerned about it.
Yeah, I am concerned because he's not speaking for himself. He's speaking for the totality of America, because there's no difference between Democrat and Republican when it comes to party affairs. So if we are so concerned about Trump because of his rhetoric, then we should be concerned about the whole white America because he's not speaking for himself.
Well, I think
If that's what you want to, if that's what you want to say, anyway.
I think you probably didn't hear me when I was saying that this is not about Trump. It is about the people, right? It is about the people who really are scared of the other side. So I use the analogy of a jersey game. You line up behind your captain and you fight because you want to defeat the other side. So it's not about Trump necessarily. He's just taking advantage of the anxieties that are out there. And you're looking at me. I came to this country through a place called Oxford, Mississippi. And I went to school at Ole Miss. Google it. Ole Miss was at the center of the civil rights struggle. Talk about a scary place. If you've never seen the KKK at night, when you are driving a car that's about to break down, a car that you bought for $200, it's about to break down in front of the KKK at 2 a.m., then you will never understand where I'm coming from. I was the third Black MBA student ever in the history of that program. And I was there when the first Black cheerleader was. These are very serious issues that should concern us.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we are narrowing it to Trump. It's more than Trump.
You're right. It's not about Trump. You're right. It's about half. It's about white America, literally. Let's just be honest about it, and what they think about us, and what they think about. I mean, it's all you think about it. The issues that are coming up: immigration, urban cities, everything that they talk about is just proxy for those other people are coming. Rudolph, can I do a minute break?
Okay. All right. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we will continue the conversation with Ikhide. I will give you guys a chance to ask a second question if we don't have new people who are in the studio with their cameras on that want to ask questions. So let's take another break and we'll be right back.
When your mazolo bio, akwa mazolo bio, Max, if you have unye go kwanu mo no fube nazo olaga ni piazugo, ulaga do ni piazugo, akwa mwilo chiyo bikora puzuru, kona bazia. Onyo mazoro biko abamba wazara dasari ibya unyane gwana ulaga dori byazigo ulaga dori byazigo abamba wilo chila bigora buzoro onawazia. Mazi weko mwe odogu no kwerezu neka onyomo niga dele mwe mazi ni bazi ibu go with melody. Odogu na chalanoka Ezi wande mliga delemo Olaga doni pezigo Olaga doni pezigo Amama mwilo chilo Bigora muzoro Anabaze Say Onyama zoro Mama wazara nesari Ibya muyanu kwana mo ofube naru Olaga doni biazugo Nasaboy Olaga doni biazugo Avama wilo chilo Biko rapuzoro Anabazi Odogu kenero bikechofo
amakwa m n'ike agwụghị gị weli igwe kwelu ike ji ọmọbịa lebe gị igwe egwu ka mbụ na-ekene ọmọgọ ndị nsọ Chukwu Emeka Lumo ike Chukwu na-egaji esi nwanne m ekene ịlapụlụ ife niile na-eme wee bịa nke gosili na anyị na gị bụ nwanne Wisdom ga-adị ka nye gị maịkị ka ogobanya bụ egwu isili mmaksi ọ bụ na-etiri egwu a malụkwa malụ n'imego m ife ọjọọ wee sị gị nwanne m ife ọkụ na ịchọlụ na nkeme Wisdom onume ekene gị gbamanwe iyo iyo biko lapụ nabasị zoro 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 Deduru joy na bugwu Awụsa Sokoto Ujembe Nwilo anụ solo onwe enwe ma n'ọfịa na-ara onye nwụrụ ozi
All right, welcome back to our conversation with Pa Ikhide, who joined us from Maryland here in the United States. Before we go for a second round, or for people who have questions, I have some that came from the comment section, so let me start with them. I don't remember the names, but someone wanted to know, aside from Fela, where are Nigeria's ideological musicians? So I think what she's getting at is who else is do you consider a musician that has a message or something that is based in ideology in Nigeria? Current musician maybe, or past ones. You're muted, Pak.
That's a great question. I mean, Fela obviously is the one that comes to mind. We've had he was incredibly prolific. He highly educated, thought about a lot of this stuff. And by the way, when they talk about Bronner doing collaborations, he was really doing collaborations based on an ideological bent. You know, he had African Americans come in to play with him, and remember, I think it was Upside Down, but he really was thinking about Pan-Africanism. He was thinking about Nigeria a lot, and there were also issues of relationships, patriarchy, and how he thought about women, and so on and so forth. There was a lot to in his life. He'd done so many songs that had to do that forced you to think about these things. I can't. So beyond Fela, you had, of course, High Life. You had Celestine Uko. You had Rex Lawson, and then you had Sonia Ade, Ebenezer Obey. But those were not. When I think about Celestine Uko and Rex Lawson, for instance, I'm thinking about, the first thing I think about is the war. the trauma of the war because we were all caught up in it. But when I think about Ebenezer Obey, Sonia Ade, and Victor Wifo, I am really thinking about social change, social commentary. Sonia Cousins came later. It's mostly about social commentary. My father also raised me in the folk songs of my people in Esanland. Umobware, Alice, they were poets. They were thinkers who impacted my life a lot because when I listened to them, but they were all, of course, from my hometown. But I am reluctant to talk about these things because one gets the impression that one is stuck in the past. And people will tell you, my daughters, my sons will tell you that these folks that they're listening to are also making political commentary, and there's a sense to it. And it didn't really, it wasn't really restricted to the musicians of Nigeria. I mean, we play when I came to this country and I was playing country music, Black Americans would look at me like, "What's wrong with you? Why are you playing country music?" And when I would play Bob Dylan or play Art and Garfunkel music, they will look at me like, "What's this?" So there's the insularity, and then there is the universality. We are the sum of our experiences. But yeah, Fela was it. There will never be another Fela.
One last question before we go to Janaba. About someone wanted to know your thoughts on Israel and Palestinians, the conflict.
So my mother used to tell me, when you beat a child, you cannot dictate to the child how the child should respond, how the child should cry. And that's what's happening to the Palestinians. Israel has literally the world behind it. And, Ta-Nehisi Coates just wrote a book based on his travels to Palestine and all of that. And one of the interviews, they asked him, "Do you believe in the right of Israel to exist?" And he said, "Well, it's not about the right. They're existing, and they're existing very well. We can't say the same about the people of Palestine." So I don't know that it will happen in my lifetime. I am hoping that the children, the women, and the men of Palestine will get the peace that they deserve, and the extremists like Hamas and what's his name, Netanyahu, basically go away so that peace can reign. But I'm really deeply concerned, and that's one of the things that upsets me about this election. Either way, there doesn't seem to, either for the Democrats or the Republicans, there doesn't seem to be relief for the Palestinians because people are just talking from both sides of their mouth.
All right. Janaba, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Rudy, for having me, and thank you, King Big Bear.
Ikhide.
Okay, thank you for having you on the Rudolph show. I've been listening from the background, and I don't have such questions, so many or so much, but to thank you for your coming to the show and share light and share your view. Most of my questions have been asked and answered, but then it's amazing that Rudolph made it possible for you and your classmates or schoolmates to meet here, which I'm hoping one day that Obi also will meet his wife here. So thank you so very much for your sharing light on most of the Nigerian thing and American politics. And as I summarize in one word, do you think it will be to advantage of Nigeria and so many African countries, if anything happened, let's just imagine the unimaginable that people like Trump come to power and send people back to their places because I remember Muslim ban, so this guy can come up with anything. And now that the Supreme Court is almost the people he chooses, do you think that Africa it will be to the greatness of Africa? Because I think some of us will not go to Africa and fold our hand and bullet will not fly somebody's ear because he would not like to be treated the way the other people have succumbed over the years.
Well, that is the evil genius of Trump. It is not logistically possible for him to do what he says he will do. It is. Let me repeat it. It is not logistically possible for him to do what he says he will do. People are here and they are here, and but he says all the right things that give his followers hope that will just wake up and he will somehow get the vehicle to take tens of millions of people back home, including, by the way, some of us who are who are legal in this country. So that part doesn't bother me. By the way, Obama was called the deporter in chief because he ended up deporting more immigrants than anybody in the history of any president in the history of this country. So the structure does not really permit the kinds of things that Mr. Trump is lying that he will do. Just to, by the time they exhaust him in the courts, his term will be over, or he might die of old age or some of that stuff. But for me, the larger issue is what will it? We need to begin to think about, looking inwards and going, finding a way, even if we don't go back, to begin to make Africa a place that we want to be in and stay in and be happy in. I think a lot about enslaved Africans who survived the Middle Passage and they came to this country and how much they missed home. Whenever I missed home, when I came to this country, there was no WhatsApp, no cell phone, none of that stuff. I was a young warrior, and I tell people it took 2 weeks and several native doctors before my mother knew I had arrived in America. But now people will be in the planes and they will be tweeting their way into America. By which I mean, I have spent much of my 40 years trying to replicate the food of my childhood, the bread of my childhood, the music of my childhood. And whenever I visit home, I really don't want to come back to visit America again because, it's as if I'm at peace spiritually, and I don't want what happened to us to happen to generations after this. I don't know about you, the beer doesn't taste the same here. The bread doesn't taste the same. The goat meat is not the same, and then when you go back, I start smiling like you are smiling now, like, man, I'm at home. And then when it is time for my flight to return, I start crying like, oh God. It's like purgatory. Everything is there, but it doesn't taste right, there was a reason why we were born there. We were meant to be there, and we are here. And money is not everything, money is not everything. We are in these beautiful homes, but we are unhappy because the spirit is not here. Our children that were born here, they're different. They're Americans. But I would stay here another 100 years, and I would always regret the fact that I am dislocated from. And if there's some kind of trauma that forces all of us to go back and deal with our issues, fine, so be it. But I don't think Trump is just full of BS. He's not going to be able to do the kinds of things that he just wants to win an election. That's all. And he wants to avoid prison also, because his best bet of avoiding prison is to become president at this point.
All right, thank you. Let me give Chief Oji, another chance if you have a question too for Ikhide.
Yeah, let me go in a different direction. I think everybody here has enough question about Trump, so I'll defer my own. But let me go back and put on your literally hat again,
Yeah.
Ikhide.
Yeah.
Because one thing that I've always, followed on your, your X handle and elsewhere is that, you are a strong critic of you often criticize African writers.
Yeah.
That is the impression that I always come across with. So when you spoke previously, one of the things you said, and I was making a note here, you criticized this idea of italicizing words. You used an example of egusi, that if we write egusi, we italicize it. I have two counterpoints there. First, we are writing in English. Okay, egusi is not an English word. Therefore, if you write something that is not in the language you're writing, I suspect that you should italicize. Secondly, I think one of the main ideas of a writer is to carry on your audience. So what do I benefit if I just write, speak very nice Chinua Achebe proverbs and all this, but my reader doesn't follow, my reader doesn't understand? Am I not limiting my audience? Thank you.
Well, so many years ago, I observed and I wrote this. Later I found academics basically took my ideas and they created a scholarly work behind one of their journals. And I said, Achebe was writing, and you will be reading, and you will think you were reading in Igbo. It was just a stroke of genius that he would write, and you would think, man, you are just immersed in his language. He wrote with the confidence of someone who would not take second place to somebody else. I want to push back about the whole notion of there's English language. Well, Google has changed that. There is language now. So if you Google egusi, it comes up. It's not a word. You don't have to do. You don't need a dictionary anymore and say, well, it's not in the dictionary, so we can't do. If you do not force people, to be in your world, if you do not excite people enough to be in your world, they will never be in your world. I am really proud of one fact that since that conversation, over about 10, 15 years ago, a lot of writers just write. They don't italicize egusi. They don't try to explain things, and people are reading them and just doing what I did when I was reading those Western books. They are going to their dictionaries, they are going to Google, and they're finding stuff, and they are enjoying themselves. I go to on the internet, you see white folks, making fun of jollof rice, doing all kinds of things, and I think it's a good thing. What African writers have done in the past 10 years of finally saying, I don't have to explain these things to you. If you really care, this is what you need to do. And that's the politics of narrative, to be quite frankly. When they were writing, they were writing for us, they were not writing for us. They wrote for themselves. When you read Oliver Twist, they were not writing for this young man that was in an Ascension Catholic College. They were writing for themselves, and I had to figure out what crumpets were. Oliver Twist loved crumpets. It seemed like something really nice that I could enjoy. In all my life in Iran, in Isham, I wanted to eat crumpets. And then I made this friend in London, and I said, you know what would be nice? I would love to eat crumpets. She says, really? And she sent them to me. They were the worst tasting English muffins I'd ever tasted in my life. But all my life, I thought, man, but that's the power of narrative, you know, to get it over. Why do you have to explain the Poroko to anybody? You know, they take time to Google it. Once they learn it, they won't learn. They won't Google it again another time. So I'm really steeped in the politics of narrative, and I really believe that if you don't force them to be, if you have to explain it to them, then you have failed. You know, again, remember what Achebe said. You know, do not something about do not worry that we might speak in English, but we intend to do unheard of things with them. And some of the things, even the English that we've mangled, they've converted them to, I mean, severally. We were using severally in the wrong ways. Now they say in the Nigerian parlance, severally means several. I think that's a triumph.
Now, thank you. Just to add to that, I think if you look at Afrobeats,
Yeah.
how they've been able to speak Yoruba and speak
Yes.
Pidgin, everybody around the world, they are singing it. And I ask Americans, what is this saying now? You are singing this song. What do you understand? And they try to explain to me what they understood. They don't apologize
No.
for speaking in singing in Yoruba or Igbo or their local Pidgin English. All right, let's go to flagship. I'll come back to people who have had a chance to.
Thank you, Rudolph, and good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to our guest, Ikhide. It's good to see you, and to the rest of the panelists and the viewers, good afternoon. I want to ask your thoughts on a question that I believe may be out of topic, but I just wanted to see what your thoughts are. And it's bordered on the relationship between the U.S. and Nigeria specifically. Right now, the U.S. is building its largest embassy in the world in Nigeria, and they've invested quite a huge sum of money. I think from the last that I checked, it's over $500 million right now in erecting that embassy in Lagos. Considering the situation that Nigeria is in right now, and the terrain that we are riding on, the direction that we seem to be going, why do you think the U.S. is spending so much investing in an embassy in a country that's in such a volatile state? And secondly, why is it being located in Lagos when the capital is in Abuja? I just wanted to hear what your thoughts are on that.
You know all the answers to that. But let me amplify them. I am retired now, so I can say whatever. They will still feed me. When I was a civil servant, I would speak from both sides of my mouth and hope that I don't get in trouble with my bosses. But I happily retired now, and I'm in the winter of my life, so I can say these things. First of all, America doesn't, I wouldn't worry so much about the expense. America doesn't do things by half. They tend to be gargantuan in the way they budget stuff. I don't know if you were here when I was explaining that in my county, an elementary school, a primary school costs $50 million to build, to renovate. A middle school costs $80 million, $80 to $120 million, and a high school costs $200 million to build. So $500 million is nothing for an embassy, and I suspect that is just the public budget. That when you add all the other stuff, espionage, this NSAS, that there's a black hole budget that you're not seeing. There is a reason why they want that embassy built by the sea. It's not just about processing visas to young Nigerians. There's a lot more in that embassy than we will ever see. And so it's all about the Cold War. It's all about control. And it's also about boundaries. It's not as if the Americans came and just said, "This is what we're going to do." We have a government, for God's sake. Even forgetting all the dark things that they're going to be doing there, the way Nigerians are treated in these embassies, a government with self-respect would have intervened to make it a bit easier. So this is more about facing up to the East, maybe Russia, and saying this is America doesn't really recognize, and most Western nations don't recognize Abuja much as the capital. Lagos is for all intents and purposes, for various practical reasons, it's the capital of Nigeria, and so they are going to set stuff up there. When their submarines come, it is not going to go to Abuja. Where do you think it's going to go? It's going to go to Lagos. So I'm telling you what you know, which is this is all about a global control, and they've set up space in the.
All right, thank you. Let me. So who else has a question? Okay, Mr. James, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for coming. Let me switch over to literature. I believe knowledge has no boundary.
Yeah.
Although I'm a geographer, but I read anything that come across my way.
Yeah.
There was a writer in the state of Maryland. His name is James Michina.
James Michina, yeah.
Good. I've read a number of his books. Texas, Mexico, Caribbean.
Yeah.
What's it called? The Covenant of South Africa, the Source, Iberia, Alaska, Hawaii. He's a fine writer. I just want to know your opinion of him. Thank you, sir.
He's a beautiful. I grew up in his books. He wrote beautiful books about the pioneers of America, the warriors that built built this country, and he wrote in beautiful prose. In my generation, that's all you read. You read James Michina, and then of course, it was not pulp fiction. It was serious work. He's long past. I think after a long time, he's long past. But he wrote really good stuff. But those are things you could buy for like 20 in our time, 20 kobo, 30 kobo, 40 kobo. It was just like, and you just bought them, and then you gave them away to friends to, if you haven't read this, read this, and read this. And that was how it ended. Yeah. It was very powerful. Yeah. Loved the man.
All right.
You are muted.
So please, good night, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Stay in touch.
Okay, Ikhide, you mentioned what musicians did to survive the changes in technology and everything, and you talked about writers. Is there anything that writers in America or in the West they are doing to survive that writers in Nigeria or Africa are not doing?
Well, they are surviving from a place of privilege. That's an easy. The first thing they do is many of them have real jobs, if you notice, because the society gives them the opportunity to have real jobs. College professors. Some like me. If you consider me a writer, I worked for almost 40 years in the civil service, and I would write in the evenings or before 9 o'clock. And so there were always things you could do that kept you going, so that in the winter of your life you had qualified for Social Security and all of that stuff. And then the structure allows you more flexibility to think about these things. You don't have to worry about a lot of things that your counterparts worry about in Africa. The stability of utilities, for instance, this security, and the kinds of fights we have in terms of politics is nothing compared to the fights our writers have in in Nigeria. I mean, in a democracy, think about the writers that have disappeared in Nigeria, never to be seen again. You know, that can't happen here. And so they have the privilege. Privilege should be a civil right for everybody, especially for creatives. They have the privilege to be able to write, and then and there's still a market. There's still a market here, even if it's a niche market. People are still buying. You know, my generation and above, they're still buying books. You know, in enough quantity for you to survive. And that's why, I mean, you think about Achebe, Soyinka, Ngugi. Without the West and the generosity, they'll be dead. They'll all be dead before their time. It's because of the privilege that the structure, the system here gives people. I told myself I would never, that it's my desire never to write a book, because I wanted to be an open book. I wanted people to be able to read me every day. And that's what I've been doing, because I can afford to. I don't dream of wealth, but I have enough to feed me and to raise my kids. So what am I? If I eat too much, I get sick. I drink too much, I get sick. It's called privilege. But if I was in Nigeria, I seriously doubt that I would have that level of privilege. I don't know if that answers your question.
A little follow-up before I go to Revolution. Adichie's new book, Dream Count, the publisher is printing 250,000 copies for the American market. I think America and maybe Britain. I think it's only America. 250,000 copies. What does that tell you?
Well, the copies are all gone because I am one of the pre-orderers. So the copies, I'm serious. The copies are, by now, I'm sure the copies are all gone, including her haters. You know, she got into, some political firestorm over, transgender rights and all of that stuff. You know, people will buy the book to say, "Oh, look, it's a terrible book," and people will buy the books. So there's a huge market for it there, and deservedly so. I think she's a great writer, and if the book comes, I will read it, or I will get my niece to read it and give me a summary of it. But she can live off of books in this and off of engagements related to her books, but she couldn't do the same. Maybe in another 5 years, she will find a Nigerian publisher that will publish the book for 5,000K, 10,000K. I don't know, but when the book was announced, there was a lot of excitement, and the first thing I did was to go to Amazon and pre-order the book.
So what does that mean, that writers should not really complain? They should just be good, be as good as Adichie. You'll be okay.
I don't know, what does that even mean? I mean, there are writers just as good as her. I mean, there's no shortage of good writers here. It just depends on I wouldn't say luck. It depends on the circumstances of your being. She's been incredibly resourceful, incredibly smart, and how she's managed herself. But it's tough out there. There are so many brilliant people, and many of them don't even know they are writers that I see, but they've not had the serendipity that she's had. The West is it. The West is it if you're an African, for good or for bad, if you're an African writer. We all dream of, so I don't want to be a hypocrite. If somebody invites me now to one of those their book festivals, I love cheese and red wine and good food. I will be there. You yab me, I will go and enjoy myself. Who not like better thing? So, it's just because I'm not there. I'm just talking nonsense. I go to the Nigerian festivals. It's just sufferhead. You're just suffering. They are telling you go and join somebody to sleep in the one hotel. I say, hi, do you know who I am? Me. But here.
When was the last Cape Festival? When was the last one?
They do it every year.
They continue to do it every year.
Yeah, every year. I think during COVID, they must have done a virtual one. for a couple of years. But yeah, they do it every year.
Okay. Okay. Revolution.
Yeah. I was very happy when you said when you go to Nigeria, for example, and anytime your flight is about to take off, you feel very sad. I feel the same. I've been outside now for 30-something years myself, and I don't go to Nigeria, I go to Gambia, and I have the same feeling.
Yes.
But anyway, what I wanted to say to you, my question, I'm a musician of, not like, you know what I mean? I do it privately. It's a very serious hobby anyway.
Yeah.
And I devote myself in, you mentioned one of my idols there, Celeste Inuku.
Yes.
So what I do is to replay his music,
Okay.
keep the lyrics, and then put it in another beat. We play
Awesome.
African reggae, you know. Do you think we have a chance? You know, I've done a lot of it. I even done one from Ebenezer Obey. Rudolph played one special one in one of the first pause we had. I did a real cover of that from what's the name of that brother again?
Oliver.
Oliver. I've done that cover, but I always do these things and keep it in my archives. Without, I don't have the courage to go public about it because I don't know what people will say.
What do you have to lose? By going public?
Yeah, but the problem is that we don't know. We don't have somebody to encourage. I've talked to Rudolph. He even asked me to do something for you. Up to now, he never even tell me whether I pass or I fail.
You are your best. You are your best fan. You just have to. And technology gives you an opportunity to promote yourself. You don't. There's nothing to. If you keep listening to other people, you will never get anywhere because we will be advising you from a place of anxieties and fear, and we mean well. But just, I mean, if it's TikTok, if it's Instagram, if it's YouTube, all it takes one day is one person to pick up your cover, and it's over. But putting it in spending a lot of time on it and keeping it in somewhere is not going to help.
Yeah. But Rudolph, sorry, before I jump away. This thing you asked me to do for you, you didn't give me any feedback, whether you listen to it, whether it's good, so that we can put it to the MP4 you requested for. I didn't get anything from you. So
yeah, thank you, Dan. I went to hell after that, after we spoke, and I was there for 4 months. So I'm just coming back. You hear from me. I just sent you my contacts. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Flagship, go ahead.
You are muted.
Okay.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I really don't have much to say other than to say thank you. And I jumped into the conversation almost at the end, just at the point where I was asking my question. But I'll go back and listen and enjoy the much of the knowledge that you shared with us today. So thank you.
What's your real name?
Excuse me?
What's your name?
I go by Stan.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ikhide, one last question before you round up and we round it up. So George Ikhide, I don't know if you know him. He's a Ghanaian professor here. He used to write for the Wall Street Journal. He wrote this book called Africa Betrayed.
Yeah.
He used to be a very conservative thinker. I don't know where he is now, but when you hear Africa betrayed, who betrayed Africa?
George Ikhide is dead.
Dead?
Yeah, George Ikhide passed away about 2 years ago or so.
I didn't know.
Yeah, we were sparring partners in the mailing list of the 90s. And I remember him, very intense man. He wrote he was quite conservative in his approach to things, but he meant well. And there was clarity in how he thought Africa should go. I think that if he was of that a tiny minority of emerging thinkers who were saying it is time for us to start looking inwards at ourselves. And and he would just rail against all of these leaders, and he called them all sorts of names. He was very, very unwavering in his focus on what these African leaders had done to us, and he was, he understood colonialism and all of that stuff, but he was not going to give any excuses. I didn't agree with him on a lot of things, but he was, of course, just like me, he was very strong-willed. He had very strong opinions about things, but he really, really cared about Africa, and he wrote several. Oh my God, he wrote books. If you look at the politics of academia, a lot of the assumptions just make colonialism, apartheid, make our former oppressors responsible for everything. There's a whole schools of thoughts about this thing devoted to blaming folks, as they should. But we tend to be given, they tend to cut our own Black leaders and our Black thinkers slack. And I think our emancipation will come when white folks, especially liberals, begin to see us as human beings, not just cute people, as human beings that can be held just as accountable as their white counterparts. It really breaks my heart that as vile and as contemptuous, as horrible as Donald Trump is, he has not done as much damage as the Obasanjos of our lives, and the Tinubus of our lives. One of, Shoyinka left America in rage when Trump became president the first time. And this time around, he's saying of Tinubu, he won. So the white folks must hold us accountable. We must hold ourselves accountable to the same degree that our white counterparts are held accountable. But we are very far away from that. Obasanjo is out in public flogging women, chasing his wife with a knife, and not to give him flowers, but to do something nefarious. But when he shows up at these literary conferences, they are taking selfies with him. Then you see Trump, and you're saying, Trump is a horrible person. Trump, if Trump chased a cat with a knife, he would be in prison. So those are the things that really make me sad. That we have a long way to go, and precisely because we have not learned how to hold ourselves accountable. For 20 years, I have been begging the NLNG prize people, open your books. What do you spend $1 million on? Why do you do this? They go, stop. Is it your money? We don't owe you anything. The mayor of Chicago spent $80,000 on the first lady's his wife's office out of a $17 billion account. That is a major issue now. He's holding press conferences explaining himself. He didn't steal the money. They're saying, why would you do this when you have a deficit problem? $80,000 is 0% of $17 billion, don't you think? That is how to make progress in this life. We are letting ourselves get away with whatever. And we need to move past that immediate post-colonial paradigm to one where we take ourselves seriously as human beings.
All right. Thank you so much, Ikhide, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
All right. You all stay in touch.
All right. So we take a break. When we come back, we will do a review. And thank you all for hanging in there.
Okwudi nyekelaniyo. Olisamalugo mkoyene menenua. Opudilio, nyekelaniyo. Chukuna malugo yobia diocha. Agaranya chogo kowe bili. Agaranya chogo kowe rienio. Owe chuku bezie chuku. Nuche chukwa busigi fegemeo. Nuche chukwa busia ifegemeo. Nifo solo ne asi alibazie. Obwe bebe agaranya muliba. Obwe wuru agaranya mebibe solia. Mano agaranya mwa. Obwe afyozie nipakwa. Agaranya chogo kowe bili. Agaranya chogo kowe rienio. Obwe chikubezio lisa. Kodili ma kodili bemo. Kodili wakema kodili wanima. Naino kwane we beluge beluo. Kodili ma kodili bemo. Kodili kemo kodili heyo. Ibedwe me wane nikadie zibohimo.
Tó fẹ́ kú torí ẹ̀.
Ọwọ́ ẹni ló ti ṣàánú kọ́. Ayé la bá, ayé la fi sílẹ̀ sí. Lọ́nà èyí yóò.
I think there was an upcoming storm, and then I think government set in with whatever it is that they do. I don't know all the specifics about it. I'm not an expert in cloud seeding or whatever it is that they use to magnify the storm to a higher degree to disturb a land that may be wanted for lithium that Harris's husband is partaking in.
So they made the storm stronger, so it would hit the.
With this one,
you think that Milton, they're making it stronger?
From a 2 to immediately to a 5, like instantaneously.
You're implying that the government made a hurricane stronger to hurt its own country, the United States of America?
Correct.
And what would be the gain of that?
If like there's been people out there, if they have an Alexa, I don't know if you've heard that, and they've asked what caused Milton. Right. You can go on there now. It's already predicted the number of deaths and the amount of, it's already predicted it. On a Google, it won't do that. If you ask it about Helene, it'll tell you the government actively used seed clouding This is before Helene even happened.
Why would a country want to have a hurricane be strong and hit its own country?
Because they want to control certain places. And if you're looking at where the hurricane's going, it's a lot of red states. If you're looking at the counties in North Carolina that were hit, there were all of them, 26 out of 28 of those counties were for Trump. They're doing whatever they can because they can't rig the election.
Even control the weather?
Yes.
Going to heaven. Full stop.
I'm going to be apologizing for making a mistake, for saying that if you don't pay tithe, you might not make it to heaven. I'm sorry, that's wrong. That's not in the Bible. What the Bible says is, ye have peace with all men, and holiness, without which no man shall see God. Now, let me tell you, listen to me. You know, it is possible to be right and wrong at the same time. I prove it to you. I mean, I'm a scientist, so I know that. For years, we taught that light travels in straight lines. Now, is that correct? At least those of you who know a little bit of physics will say, sure, the light doesn't bend at corners, it goes straight. But later on we discover it's not just not straight as a rod. Light travels in waves, going in one direction, but in waves. It is wrong to limit you to 10%. At a time when some of you should be 20%, 30%, 40%, 10% should be for beginners. Giving should be violently.
All right, welcome back. We have about 30 minutes to round it up. So I want to get feedback from people who watched. It's only me and Flagship. So, Flagship.
Well, thank you. Like I said initially, I joined the conversation at its tail end. But the reason I asked that question is I was having a conversation with a friend who actually is in the Marines and has worked in Lagos before, actually in Nigeria, both Lagos and Abuja at the embassy. And he posed the question to me, do I know why America is building its biggest embassy in my country and what that stands for us Nigerians and as a whole Africa as it is? Mind you, it's the biggest in the world. What would make them want to invest so much when the country seems to be going down, although there are resources and all of that there? And it was a good conversation. And that's why I posed the question to our guest today, just to get his thoughts on it. And he gave me the public knowledge in response. And I understand that there are some things you can't just say out in public, although he said he's gracefully retired and he can say whatever he wants. But the reason I asked basically is the agitation that we have currently ongoing for secession and separation in Nigeria. Every tribe wants its own region and all of that. Seem to be a far cry from reality. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen at all, based on my conversation with this gentleman. And I wanted to know if he was going to, if he thinks in that direction or not. So I said to ask him and see what his opinion is on it.
Were you thinking that it was going to, that there is a chance that Nigeria will break?
I don't think so. I really do not. I don't have that opinion because when I look at all the agitation from everybody, the Nnamdi Kanus and the rest of them that are crying out loud for separation, most especially Biafra. It seemed like it's not going to happen. That's wishful thinking from what is really happening on the ground, what we are not privy to know about. And I would want to think that perhaps the agitators or those who really think that Nigeria should split and everybody should find their way and figure themselves out should go back and really look inwards into what the real conversation is and what is going on behind closed doors or behind the curtains, so we don't waste our time and lives of young Nigerians who are still there in this fruitless and unproductive protest that ends up in death for many. Perhaps there's another way we can chart this cause and change the conversation. And in addition to that, I met Senator Warnock, one of our senators here in the state of Georgia, at the airport one time. I was going to DC on a business trip, and he was at the airport. We were waiting at the gate to board. And in our little chit chat, the 5 minutes or so that I spent with him, he picked up my accent and asked where I was from. And I said Nigeria, and he said, wow, such a great country with so much potential, but it's ravaged and being ravaged. And I asked him a question. I said, Nigeria cannot be ravaged like you think it is without the West being involved. You guys know about everything that's going on there and how the people are being impoverished intentionally by its government. And you, America, the West, you support what its leaders are doing to its people, the citizens of the country of Nigeria. And his response actually shocked me. He said, well, it's in your hands, the people. If you push back, if you come up and want to take your country back, you will get it back. Now, that's a loaded response, So it tells me that, yes, the West has a hand, they have the agenda and all of that. But if the people would gather themselves together and fight back, they will back off. So waiting on this government or the government politicians, so to say, to ease things and let it slide just like that is a far cry from what we're expecting. More and much need to be done to achieve the desired goal that will give the average Nigerian citizen a breath of fresh air in terms of living conditions within its own country. So there's much that needs to be done.
All right. Thank you, the flagship. Let me get the view of Eagles Air. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rudolph Okonkwo. Although I've been following this segment when you have a special guest, but the reason why I didn't enjoy, I don't know what to ask him. So it's better I stay on my own background and begin to watch. That is the truth about it. So, unmute yourself.
I understand. Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say in effect, according to the question he asked the flagship, is that whether Nigeria will be split into 2 or into 3 or 4 or that. Anything can be possible in that country. Anything can happen in that country. But how it will happen, I don't know. Nobody knows. Because if you watch the current situation of that country called Nigeria, sometimes you'll be crying that nobody beats you, but the country itself has started beating you because of the way things are moving. If you have people back home, I ask them how they are managing. You understand that these people, they are in hell. That's why when you said that he just came back from the hell, I know where he came from. He just came back from Nigeria. That's what I just summarized it immediately. So that country, the problem I have in that country, sometimes I was listening to one of the people that built Dubai. So the young man there, we are interviewing him, asking him a lot of questions. He said that when looking at Nigeria have every potential, have every resources to be better than Dubai. But the problem Nigeria have is leadership. That when you get a wrong leadership, everything about the country has become wrong. So for Nigeria to split into two is when the wrong leadership continue to triumph over the affairs of Nigeria. When the wrong leadership began to have started to become a pilot, piloting the affairs of Nigeria, you find that there will be many problems. For instance, right now, I don't know whether this will get into whether there will be demonstration on certain nature, because I found out that Tinubu have come with that government of Lagos to federal government Nigeria, government of tax that I have. They have introduced something like TIN, tax income number. That as long as you have an account, you must have that TIN to show that they are collecting tax from you. And when I saw this, I said, I'm not surprised. Now, these are the things that push somebody that didn't give job. Somebody is struggling to have a square meal a day. That you're collecting tax upon that. You know, if when you push somebody to the wall, what will happen? The person will bounce back. So Nigeria will bounce back. I don't know how they will bounce back to APC or whoever that happened. How it happened, I don't know. I was listening to what is his name? This young man, Dele Faretimi, in one interview. He said that the way he wants Nigeria to demonstrate against this government is to sit at home. Let everybody of Nigeria sit at home. Police will not come to your house and shoot you, God. Police will not come to your house and arrest you. Why it didn't come out? When everybody sit at home, government will know that things are going wrong. Could you imagine a bag of rice? A bag of rice is 100 and something thousand naira right now. A bag of beans is 100 and something thousand naira. Petrol, you know where. In fact, some people are still 1,300. Just a liter of petrol. Now, when such a thing is happening, what do you expect? Chaos will come out one day. And how it will start, nobody knows. But in that country, if this situation continues this way, it may split. Because all this is something that brings agitation. You know, agitation starts from, you're not treating me well. You're not doing me well. I want to express my feeling. They don't want me to express my feeling. Now I have to agitate. That's the main issue. So I don't know. This is 1 year of Tinubu. By the time Nigeria will stay 3 years, they will understand who Tinubu is and how Nigeria will run about. But I pray if the country want to split, let it split in peaceful way. Because the bloodshedding is much. Although I know that Great Britain will not allow that because they have investment in Nigeria. I know America, who is investing $500 million in their embassy in Lagos, they will not allow such a thing to happen, because when such a thing happens, they will lose a lot. So rather, they will allow people to be suppressed. Like when you talk about Adichie new book, there's something that occurred in my mind when you talk. I said that I wish that somebody would sit down and write a book concerning how West is handling Nigeria. What do I mean by that? Even if they know that if you become a president of a country and they have indictment in their own country, they use that opportunity, that indictment, to tell you, we're going to support you to become a president of so country so that your sin be forgiven. But you're going to adapt, you're going to stay on what we said. That's exactly the thing that happened in Nigeria. Because if there's another person that have that case, our president now, I don't want to call his name because of the program, their president have, he found out that America will come past fully to bust in that case. But because there is some secret agreement and all the rest of them, they say, okay, let this thing be forgiven. Let it be a civil problem and sort of nature. So the problem is that who will come out and write to say that the suppression and the Westerners, the way they handle Africa is not good. For instance, and I summarize with this, I was reasoning over when you talk about Middle East, they have Al Jazeera. When you talk about Great Britain, they have BBC. When they talk about America, they have CNN. When they talk about France, they have France 24. When they talk about Russia, they have Aruti, Sota, and Nature. These people, they are telling their story. Africa, who is telling our story? No. So splitting is a major problem because there's nobody to tell your story, nobody to say this is what concerns Africa. If open Al Jazeera, there's nothing they will talk again apart from what is happening in Israel and Gaza. Other things they just touch it too because they are telling their story. Africa, who is telling our story? Nobody. And we allow West to tell our story. That's where problem is. So they will keep on controlling us until we decide, based on what the black sheep said, until we decide our own to do what, to take our country by ourselves and become who we want to be. That's the truth about it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Eagles Air. I wanted to mention, talk about taxes, and I saw a story today that Enugu state government, they are going to begin to tax dead bodies in the morgue. So if you put a dead body in the morgue, every day you pay 40 naira. So if you keep somebody there for 1 year, you can multiply it and see how much money they are going to make from your dead body.
Did they give a reason for that? What's
well, I think they just want to discourage people from keeping, they want more people to bury their dead immediately instead of keeping them in the morgue. Meanwhile, there are churches that are insisting that if the body is not there, they won't come and do the funeral. So sometimes policies, I don't know which one comes out first. I don't know how they work hand in hand, but those are the things going on. We will just round up. Forefathers will be here in a moment. He's going to start a new stream.
Please, before you go, let's correct this thing of forefather, because the forefather does not control this panel very well. Sometimes when forefather talks, I don't come in because the thing become a noisy area. Somebody will say, okay, watch how you handle this program. Everything moving in sequence. But when forefather comes now, you will jump, flash you, and go to some person. Before you could, somebody will interject, and everywhere becomes so noisy. But let the thing go. No matter whatever that happens, you are in charge. You are the one controlling the panel. You are the charge of giving direction. When someone wants to interject, say, please, you mute that person. I say, let this person finish with whatever he is saying. Then after the person has finished, then what is it I have? 1 minute. Things will correct. But when everybody is talking, you know that nobody is understanding. You know, sometimes people are there to be educated. But when everywhere is rowdy, noise, and also then what are you educating people with? I hope you can stay on background and notice what I'm saying. It's truth.
Thank you.
So you need to reconsider and give some directions about all these things. Personally, I don't feel good about it. I'll tell the truth.
All right. Thank you, Eagles Air. Just one more question for you. Someone actually asked you, do you speak Hindi? Is it Hindi? Oh, do you speak the Indian language?
Tora.
You try?
Tora. Small. Yes, India have a lot of languages, like Nigeria. And in their own languages, some states don't hear each other 100%. That's the main problem. So the one you hear is the one you speak. And their language is very hard to learn. It's not a language that just like a French. You want to learn French, then you understand that French is easy to pronounce. But when they write a Hindi here now, Hindi is the general language, as they say. When they write it here, you can't even read it out. They don't know how they do the drawing. That's the main issue.
Thank you, Eagles Air. Thank you so much. CM.
Like I said, Tora is a Hindi. Then another language of India, they say they have another language. They say that little. That konjom. Konjom is little, and that is Tamil language. So it is other languages.
Thank you. Sim.
Yes,
Do you
Rudolph.
have any feedback on our guests and the conversation we had?
I quite like. I quite like his what is that? Can I say world view? The way he speaks about and his criticisms, because I read his page quite a lot on Facebook. I like the way he's so much. What is it called? When I say, I think Achebe is his favorite. That's what I wanted to ask him, but I decided let me leave that out and then go to something that should be more distant. He says so much about Achebe. In one of his articles I read, he said he felt that if he could write out like Achebe or something, he will be fulfilled or no something. I wanted to bring it up, but I don't want something too trivial. So I quite like him as a guest. He's very opinionated. I know that before he comes in. And then the questions he was answering, I think he's straight from the heart. I don't think he's being political in terms of answering, evading question or answering question. He's quite, to me, he's down to earth. That is why we rate him. I like him as a guest. What he discussed, yes. We need voices like that, genuine, very clear in what he's saying. I don't think he has he's more of a, he has a political camp he belongs to. I don't think so. So nothing informs his analysis than what he had in his heart. He just said the way it is. So I knew about him, and then in fact, when I thought he was the person that won the LNG prize. Maybe it was. No, to be honest, I said, so this man, I will joke with. No, and I read, I said, Familoni. I said, okay, maybe he's coming to discuss about the LNG something. I said, okay. I thought he was the person that got the prize after, because I remember he was here when he came back from Oxford. One time he went there for something, I think last year or last 2 years. So I do follow him. He's a good guest. I quite. It's just that my network was playing up, so I couldn't fire the second question or beat when he left. But I'm quite. He's a lovely, jovial, jolly fellow. Somebody to have as a friend. I quite like him as a person. And then I can't see anything to fault him on, because he's not politically inclined. So you can't just use Nigerian political what is it called, all this nonsense to tie him or to implicate him somewhere or criticize his viewpoint. But he's like outside looking in, and then looking in with, it doesn't really concern him. So all he wants is enjoy his life. He's quite a very sociable person. And then I mean, you also love him now, don't you? You like him. You like
Yeah, it's my
Ikhide.
man. Yeah, it's my man.
He's a nice man. So
But if you're a
thanks
writer,
to
you
all of
should be careful. You should be careful with him if you're a writer, because if he comes after you, you're finished.
uh, yeah, he criticizes. No, he criticizes a lot, but in the
Yeah,
end,
yeah.
in fact, what I wanted to tell him in his second time, in his second round before he left, let me not say it. I should have said if Ikhide Kelo, he will say yes. I said, now fine, you no kill person, because that is always he say.
That's true. That's his that slogan. Thank you.
When he
Thank you so
criticizes, he said, now fine, I no kill
much.
person.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you. Electricity, welcome. Well,
Yeah, Reverend Rudolph. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Like, I won't be long. I came here because of Flashy Bros. I beg, when they won't start the Pidgin English segment, now because of you, I entered this show. When we want start, when we want start.
we go put that one for line in a minute. Make we get in touch. We got to.
Okay, because we need to start to run out because our people we did back for that side 1 year, the Pidgin, 1 year the Pidgin English. So we'll start to the yarn apata for here now. So
We say a few of our people when you get out for home say, man, when we start to yarn inside this program, we
yeah,
get
so very necessary. Nobody go come carry last for here.
And Rudolph, it's true. You know that pidgin English.
Yeah, I talked about it last Sunday. We'll talk.
I think some people saw it and they were like, "Oh wow, so this can be done." So yeah.
So we need to start to run now. We need to start to run now. All this order they speak Oyibo for years, so not be that one again. The Oyibo never carry us go anywhere. No carry us go anywhere again. But we start to speak our own. Now leave all these professors there now. Now book one shop. Where the book? Where the book don't carry us streets? It don't change Nigeria. Yeah, leave that matter there. All these ones there, since that's a tie, they won't commit suicide.
All right, we have to end it here. Thank you, everybody. Let me just thank especially new user found. There's a new member who joined, who is joining to support this program. We appreciate you. You can be a member of join the Dr. Damage's YouTube channel. So we thank him. Ejikeme, we thank you. Igbo Basic, we thank you. And Tobe, thank you so much for supporting the program. On behalf of everybody else, I want to thank all those that joined us and our guest, Ikhide. Next Sunday, we are going to bring you a new guest, interesting guest. I'm trying to weigh 3 people. I have Shore on the line, and I have Adiola and other people, but I will announce that during the week. Thank you all, and we have Forefathers running a new show on a new stream. I shared the link so you can join him on a stream that is, I think he's about to start. Thank you, the flagship. Thank you, Eagles Air. Thank you, CM, and thank you, Electricity. And I'll see you guys next Saturday. Take care.